Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about something slightly different. It's about my great uncle. He was a pilot during World War II and he flew Halifax bombers. He was part of 429 Squadron from Leaming in North Yorkshire. Now I'm lucky enough to have all his memoirs, his flight log book, and also diaries, not necessarily diaries, but like little short bits, newspaper cuttings from his crew members that have spoke about what happened during World War II later on in their life. Um, so I've got a couple of really cool stories that I feel like I want to share with you guys. You might find it interesting. You might just think this isn't for me, but please let me know. Um, so this is all a story about how he got his goldfish badge and become part of the Goldfish Club. If you don't know what a Goldfish Club is, you become members of it if you manage to land your plane in the sea, and then it had something to do with the Goldfish Club was part of the company that made the dinghies that went into the planes. So if you used the dinghy on your plane, you then become part of the Goldfish Club. It was like a charity type of thing that was set up by the companies. Really cool thing. So this is a model of what Steve's plane was. And this is what he used actually in World War II. And this was all to do with briefings and I was going to talk about their flying formations and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to use this as a demonstration of what happened that night. And this was the 10th of March, 1944. So Steve's at the front, obviously in the cockpit. Behind him is his flight engineer, Jack Phillips. Now this engine here decides it's not running quite right. It's running quite hot. Jack mentioned it to Steve. Steve goes, that's fine, we'll keep an eye on it. Jack gets out from his position and goes and checks on something behind. I'm not quite sure what he checks on, but I know he's not in his position. So that now starts to get prop runaway, which is really revving really high and it's vibrating massively, so much so that it rips its cowling off. So it then flips on its back and it starts plummeting into the North Sea. Now Jack is now absolutely flung around in this plane. Now he's trying to now get back to his position. Now Steve manages to pull the plane back up, right? And this engine is now bursting into flames, going mental. And the vibrations are so strong, it's about to rip this wing off. Now Jack manages to get back into his seat. He then starts shutting it down. Now the only thing they can do is ditch. There's no other option. So Steve turns the plane to head inland. They're now off the coast of Scotland. And all what this was meant to be a little routine cross-country flight. 14 planes, have a little practice, come back and land. This ain't going well. So they're now heading back inland. The radio operator has locked on his last signals, so they know roughly where this plane is going to ditch. So they're coming down. Steve's going to try and get the tail end to hit the water first to try and break the momentum, to slow them down, and then come in and then hopefully skip along the water. But this is what happens. Comes in, smacks the tail on the end, does well, slows it down. But then this wing hits the water and then catapults them round, and then they land into the sea. Smashes the front of the nose cone in, so that all breaks because that was made out of perspex. So that when as soon as it hit the water, that just obliterated. Then flooding the whole cockpit and the navigator, the bomb aim, and the radiator, that was all submerged. But luckily, the navigator, the bomb aimer, and the radio operator, when this is all going down and he's going to ditch, they move from their position now into a little position there where there's some seating area. So when they come down, they can then open the doors and get straight onto the wings. So they've come down, they've landed, the whole thing's now in water. Obviously it's in water with the engine now put out. But Steve has got a hatch above his head, right about there on the cockpit, and he can't get it open. And he's still got his mask on, he's still plugged in, so he's unplugging himself, getting his seatbelt off, and he can't get his hatch open. So he's now swum himself upside down in the water and he's kicking it with his feet trying to open it. No luck. And he says in his memoirs he didn't really panic that much, but at that point he thought he's going to lose it. So he then swims out through the broken nose cone. Luckily that was smashed in, and he makes his way back onto the wing. Rear gunner was having a right old time. So I've been in the back of one of these planes and it is tiny, and the door to get into that rear gun is even smaller. It's like a little tiny hatch. Now the rear wheel, not all models, but this model went up inside. Some of them they used to drop out mid-flight, so then they ended up just leaving them down and welding them. But this one retracted back up inside in the fuselage. Now he had to squeeze himself through a little tiny door and in through the big rear wheel that takes up most of the room on this fuselage. So he's had to squeeze himself through this with the plane now sort of in water and filling up, to then walk along here to then get out the hatch onto the wing. So they're all now on the wing. Steve's made himself out, got back in here, and Steve is wringing wet because he's been in the water the longest than all of them. And then they're obviously now sitting there and they're waiting for this dinghy to pop out of the wing. They've watched all these survival videos. They know what's meant to happen. You put your plane in the water, dinghy activates, pops out of the wing, you're all good. But no, it didn't. It stayed in the plane. And they're looking at it going, when's it going to come out? So they're now kicking it, banging it, trying to prise the hatch open. Eventually they get the dinghy out. Then hits the water there. Then it does activate. They all jump in. And now they're frantically trying to cut the rope off of the dinghy, because obviously the dinghy was attached to the plane with a bit of rope. They didn't want the plane to then sink and then drag them down. Now, in fact, the plane stayed afloat for another 2 days before it sunk. So they're now in their little dinghy and they've got a flare gun. Pitch black. They're trying to get the flare gun working. They've then shot it up. They watched the flare go up and they're in the dinghy going, oh, that's good, isn't it? And then turns and comes straight back down on them. So they're now frantically leaning out, trying to paddle themselves out the way of this flare that's coming straight back down on top of them, which they do so. And luckily, a fishing trawler has seen this plane go overhead, seen it's on fire, and they've seen it go down. So they've made their way over there. Very nice of them. And then see these guys in the dinghy. Now, this time they've been out in the North Sea, soaking wet for a solid hour or so. And they're on the cusp of it all going very pale. So, dinghy comes along, picks them up. All good. Not dinghy. Fisher trawler comes along, picks them up. They're all good. Coastal Command comes along. They manage to land, pick them up, and then take them back to base. Got the operations record book here. It's a photocopied version of that night. So I've got here the 10th of March 1944. Now, Stephen Puskas was the pilot of CL685. The plane was called Sweet Adeline. Now, it developed engine trouble to such an extent that the excess vibrations caused the cowling to break away. It was apparent that the outer wing might also break away, so ditching was taken. The action was taken. This occurred about 2 miles out of sea, off of Bridge of Dawn, wherever that is, Aberdeen. That's where it is. The whole crew was successful in ditching operations and escaped without injury. So credit, he managed to get that plane down and not to kill anyone or himself. Yeah, if you're interested as well, I've got a load more cool stories about his career during World War II. Cheers, guys.